since the release of Saving Private Ryan. Without a doubt, one of the most iconic war movies ever made. And man, even 2 decades later, that opening battle sequence is still just total insanity. So, sit back and enjoy 50 facts you didn't know about Saving Private Ryan. The opening sequence of the invasion on Omaha Beach was surprisingly not filmed in France at all. The French government would not give permission for the movie to be shot on Normandy's beaches, so it was instead done in Ireland. One common misconception is that Saving Private Ryan was based on the Sullivan Brothers, a group of 5 brothers who were all killed aboard the USS Juno in World War II. The movie is partly based on a true story, but it's not about the Sullivan Brothers. It takes from the story of the Nyland brothers. 4 brothers, just like in the movie, 3 of which were supposedly killed in action, leaving the 4th brother, Fritz, to be shipped off back to America. Later on, it was found out that Edwards, one of the other 3 brothers who was presumed dead, was actually found alive after escaping from a POW camp in Burma. In the scene where Paul Giamatti's character, Staff Sergeant Hill, says,
"The streets have been quiet for about 45 minutes. Most of the German fire now is concentrated to the westward."
If you look at the timestamp, he says this right around the 45-minute mark of the movie. Steven Spielberg had the color saturation turned down by 60% to give the movie more of a grainy, realistic, and gritty feel. But many cable providers like DirecTV, Dish Network, and others had the color altered back to its original form because they were getting so many complaints from customers saying that something was wrong with their TV. In a bit of movie symmetry, they find the wrong Private Ryan an hour into the film and the real Private Ryan with an hour left in the movie. The 2 soldiers who were killed while trying to surrender were actually members of the OST battalion, POWs from Eastern European countries who were forced to fight in the German army. They were saying, "Please don't shoot me. I am not German. I am Czech. I didn't kill anyone."
What'd he say?
Look, I washed for supper.
Neil Patrick Harris was considered for the role of Private Ryan. That would have been strange considering the way his career has gone. Before Tom Hanks was cast as Captain John Miller, both Harrison Ford and Mel Gibson were considered for the lead role. Edward Norton was offered the role of Private Ryan, only to turn it down in favor of American History X. Robin Williams actually introduced Matt Damon to Steven Spielberg during rehearsals for Good Will Hunting. 2 weeks later, Spielberg contacted Damon and asked if he wanted the part of Private Ryan. Spielberg only cast Matt Damon because he wanted someone the audience wouldn't recognize, and he was a relatively unknown actor at the time. Well, that plan backfired because Good Will Hunting released before Saving Private Ryan, effectively turning Matt Damon into a movie star overnight.
Well, I got a number. How do you like them apples?
Any gunfire you hear throughout the movie is entirely real. The sound effects were recorded with live ammunition from authentic World War II weapons. Because so much work was put into carefully crafting the sound to make it as accurate as possible to World War II, Steven Spielberg requested that any theater showing the movie crank the volume all the way up. He also requested that no one be allowed entrance into the theater once the movie had begun playing, just like Alfred Hitchcock did with his movie Psycho. Spielberg used over 40 barrels of fake blood to showcase the carnage and destruction on Omaha Beach. The overall budget of Saving Private Ryan was only $70 million. And when you consider the fact that the opening battle sequence alone cost $12 million, that $70 million figure seems like a lot less. What's even crazier is that none of the action on the beach was storyboarded. They sorta just said go, and hoped a bunch of cameras would be able to capture all the chaos that came along with the beach invasion. I think it's safe to say they did a pretty decent job.
What's the rallying point? Anywhere but here!
I've been getting paid $1,000 a month, if not more, just from this app on my phone. And I don't know if you can see this, but it's called Audible. Okay, so I'm gonna show you. Right here, I have a check from Audible. This is for $1,100. This one is for $1,100 again. And then this one is $1,200. Every month, I am getting paid by Audible. For those of you that don't know what Audible is, it's actually a child company of Amazon, which is one of the largest marketplaces in the world. So,
2 of the landing crafts in Saving Private Ryan were actually used during World War II.
30 seconds!
Of the almost 1,000 extras present for the Omaha beach invasion, many were members of the Irish Army Reserve, and around 20 or 30 of those extras were amputees who were given temporary prosthetic limbs in order to simulate the loss of body parts in war. Saving Private Ryan was the highest grossing movie of 1998 in the United States, and even more impressively, it was the last R-rated movie to lead the box office charts in the US for a total of 16 years, until American Sniper. Steven Spielberg ingeniously attached drills to the side of the cameras and would turn them on to simulate shaking when explosions were being set off. While filming, the crew's photographer let Spielberg know that there were actually shaker lenses that did exactly what Spielberg had supposedly invented. Saving Private Ryan is the last film to use a non-digital editing system to win an Academy Award in that category. Billy Bob Thornton was set to play the role of Sergeant Horvath, but had to back out because he didn't want to film the scenes on the beach, as he had aquaphobia, a fear of water. Matt Damon ad-libbed the whole scene about his brother in the barn with the ugly girl, and although the story was not especially funny or interesting, Spielberg decided to keep it in because it was exactly the type of story an unformed kid like Ryan would tell.
Danny, you're a young man. Don't do it.
The Battle of Normandy at the start of the film and the Battle of Ramelle at the end are both 25 minutes long, making up nearly an hour of the movie. The entire movie only took 59 days to shoot, with 25 of those days being devoted to the Omaha beach scene. Tom Hanks was inducted into the U.S. Army Ranger Hall of Fame as an honorary member thanks to his performance as Captain John Miller.
Earn it.
On the back of the helmets of some of the US soldiers, you can see white stripes. These stripes indicate higher ranking soldiers. Vertical stripes indicate an officer, while horizontal stripes are for NCOs, or non-commissioned officers. After the success of Saving Private Ryan, Spielberg gathered the same creative team, and they made the video game Medal of Honor. The game went on to be a huge hit, and spawned a video game franchise that included the likes of Medal of Honor Frontline, which featured a D-Day opening taken straight from Saving Private Ryan.
Give me some covering fire!
Steven Spielberg wrote the role of Caparzo specifically for Vin Diesel after watching his film Multifacial, which was his writing, directing, producing, and acting debut. Diesel was also paid $100,000 for his portrayal as Caparzo. Some people have contended that the scene where the soldiers throw the mortar rounds by hand is both unrealistic and fake. However, Medal of Honor recipient Charles Kelly would beg to differ, as he did exactly that during a battle in Italy in 1943. Saving Private Ryan ended up being blocked in India because of the violence and gore. They demanded that Spielberg cut some parts out, but he decided it wasn't worth sacrificing the integrity of the movie, and resolved not to show the film in India at all. The Home Minister of India saw the film himself to see what all the fuss was about, and after watching it was so impressed that he ordered the film to be released uncut. One of the voice actors in the German dubbed version of Saving Private Ryan was actually there during D-Day and had to drop out of production because it gave him terrible flashbacks to World War II.
I just got an extra $8,400 for free. All I had to do to get it was agree to test out.
Tom Sizemore was battling a severe drug addiction during the filming of the movie. Spielberg ended up giving him an ultimatum where he would have to get his blood tested every single day. And according to Sizemore, he said he would fire me on the spot and refilm all 58 days with someone else if he had to. Renowned historian and author Stephen Ambrose, who served as the historical consultant for Saving Private Ryan, was given a special screening all by himself. At the 20-minute mark, Ambrose asked that the film be paused because of the intense violence and realism, and walked outside to collect himself. After composing himself, he returned and watched the film to its end, and later commented to Spielberg that Saving Private Ryan was the best war movie ever made. The MPAA actually has something called a masterpiece exception, which means that films that would usually be rated NC-17 get rated R, because the broader artistic work outweighs the violence that is shown as part of its message. Saving Private Ryan was one of those movies that fell under the masterpiece exception, but Steven Spielberg said that even if the film got an NC-17 rating, he would have released it exactly the same. Captain Dale Dye, who was the film's military advisor and also a decorated Marine with 3 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star, made a cameo in the movie as a war colonel in the scene with Bryan Cranston. He's that dude right there. When Captain John Miller finally tells the unit what he did for a living, originally, the speech was much longer and more drawn out. But Hanks felt like the speech was out of character for Captain Miller, so he shortened it up and got right to the point.
I just know that every man I kill, the farther away from home I feel.
The Department of Veteran Affairs set up a special 800 number in anticipation of the hundreds of former soldiers who would be traumatized after seeing the film. Also, because Saving Private Ryan came out 50 years after the war, there were tons of World War II veterans in the audience. And sadly, that was probably the last time anything like that ever happened. The actors all went through a grueling boot camp to prepare them for their roles as soldiers. It involved camping in soaking wet conditions, only calling each other by their characters' names, and being constantly referred to as turds. Matt Damon was not allowed to attend the boot camp to increase the cast's resentment towards him, hoping it would show in their performances.
Sort of thing.
Reload and commence fire. On the firing line, stand by. Fire!
The Magnificent 11 are a set of famous photos taken by Robert Capa while he was with the earliest waves of troops landing on the beach. Capa actually took 106 pictures in total. However, there was an accident processing the photos and all but 11 were destroyed. Steven Spielberg has gone on record to say that these photos were a huge inspiration while filming Saving Private Ryan. The hybrid motorcycle tank was a real vehicle called a Kettenkrad. Over 8,000 were produced, and many were used to lay communication cables, pull heavy loads, and carry soldiers through the deep Russian mud. In the year 2000, a judge sentenced 9 teenagers to watch Saving Private Ryan after they pleaded guilty to vandalizing a veterans park. Steven Spielberg dedicated this film to his father as he served during the war as a communications chief of a B-25 in Burma. Spielberg said his father never told him of the horrors of war, just the friendships he had, a theme which is felt throughout the entirety of Saving Private Ryan. Tom Sizemore was supposed to work on The Thin Red Line before receiving an offer for Saving Private Ryan. Spielberg came right out and said, "Do you want to go to Australia with Terry Malick, or do you want to come to Great Britain and Ireland with me and Tom Hanks?" And I told him I wanted to go to Great Britain and Ireland. At the start of production, Steven Spielberg made a pledge to shoot the entire movie from the point of view of the Rangers. He was very determined not to show the German machine guns and rocket launchers, but he had to relent because it showed the audience how it was like shooting fish in a barrel for the Germans. A big part of the casting process for Spielberg included picking people who looked like they were from World War II. As he put it, you know, the people in World War II actually look different than the people look today. We look more innocent. In those days, all the boys looked like men. A lot of the people I cast in this picture, I was looking at their faces to match the faces I saw on the newsreels. This was the 16th collaboration between John Williams and Steven Spielberg to create the score for the movie. It was recorded over the course of 3 days at Symphony Hall with the help of the Boston Symphony Orchestra for a rate of around $100,000 an hour. Williams and Spielberg opted to totally exclude music during any of the battle scenes, instead playing it after to give a moment of reflection on what just occurred. There was also very little underscore, as the music made up just under an hour of the film's almost 3-hour duration. The French city of Rommel was actually a set built up over the course of 4 months at the Hatfield Aerodrome, about 30 miles outside of London. Rubble was brought in from neighboring construction sites to give the city a bombed-out feel, and the whole set was eventually reused for Band of Brothers. Originally, 8 men were sent out to find Private Ryan. At the end of the movie, only 2 survived, Private Richard Ribin and Corporal Timothy Upham. The Czech hedgehogs that lined the beach at Normandy were evidence of a serious miscalculation by the Germans. Czech hedgehogs refer to an anti-tank obstacle made of metal beams that were commonly used against tanks, but also worked perfectly at stopping landing vessels. So, when Germany was preparing for the invasion of Normandy, they believed the Allied forces would approach at high tide and place the hedgehogs accordingly. But when the Allied forces landed in the early morning hours of June 6, 1944, it was low tide, which rendered most of the Czech hedgehogs useless on the beach. Throughout Saving Private Ryan, the soldiers constantly say the word
Fubar. Fubar. Fubar.
This means up beyond all recognition.